January 6 House Committee sends criminal referrals against Trump. New petition pressures U.S. House members not to seat GOP insurrectionists in 2023. Poll asks Musk to quit as Twitter CEO. FBI flagged content on social media giant. Amazon fails to properly record work-related injuries, illnesses. Iran arrests prominent actress amid protests. From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. Our top story tonight. The U.S. House January 6 committee voted unanimously to send 4 criminal referrals against former President Donald Trump to the Justice Department. The referral is on charges of inciting or assisting an insurrection, obstruction of an official proceeding of Congress, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and conspiracy to make a false statement. The committee recommended similar charges against key Trump advisors and former administration officials. The referrals are not legally binding. The committee examined attempts by the former president and his allies to overturn the 2020 presidential election. It was the committee's last public meeting to approve the final report on Monday. It interviewed over 1,000 witnesses, went over millions of pages of documents, and held 10 public hearings. This ends the 18-month investigation. 2 progressive advocacy groups launched a petition Friday to pressure the U.S. House not to seat returning members who supported the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Republican Representatives Paul Gosar, Lauren Boebert, and Marjorie Taylor Greene are ineligible to hold future public office, the petition says. It cites a section of the 14th Amendment barring anyone engaged in insurrection or rebellion from federal office. It also argues that the 3 representatives voiced support for and helped facilitate the deadly insurrection. Free Speech for People and Move On led the petition, which nearly 67,000 people have signed as of Saturday morning. Watchdog groups have also launched or pledged to launch legal efforts to bar former President Donald Trump and other Republican insurrectionists from office. Nearly 58% of people responding to a Twitter poll asked Elon Musk to quit as head of Twitter. Musk created the poll, which by Monday morning had 17.5 million people voting. The Twitter CEO has come under fire for recent policy changes and shutting down accounts of some leading journalists. He earlier pledged to abide by the poll's results. Leslie Podesta, replying to Musk on Twitter, said the idea that someone makes decisions on a company he bought for $44 billion by running a Twitter poll is astonishing. In related news, before billionaire Elon Musk bought Twitter in October, the FBI used to send it messages flagging tweets for suggested moderation. That's according to internal documents released by Musk. Some contacts with the FBI social media task force, staffed with about 80 agents, were mundane. But a surprisingly high number are FBI requests for Twitter to take action on election misinformation, including joke tweets from low-follower accounts, according to journalist Matt Taibbi. Taibbi has been working with Musk to release the internal documents, which have been dubbed the Twitter files. The FBI and Department of Homeland Security regularly sent social media content to Twitter, pre-flagged for moderation, Taibbi said on Twitter. He added that Twitter's contact with the FBI was constant and pervasive, as if it were a subsidiary. Amazon failed to properly record work-related injuries and illnesses during inspections at 6 warehouse facilities in 5 states, the U.S. Department of Labor said on Friday. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, issued citations for 14 record-keeping violations. Amazon faces over $29,000 in proposed penalties for those violations. Doug Parker, OSHA's assistant secretary, said nothing will be done to keep an injury from recurring if it isn't even recorded in the logbook. OSHA's investigations at the 6 locations are ongoing. A Louisiana grand jury on Thursday indicted 5 state police officers in the 2019 death of black driver Ronald Greene. Greene died on a roadside in northeast Louisiana. Authorities initially ruled his death was a result of a car crash, but suppressed body camera footage soon emerged showing the officers beating, stunning, and dragging Greene. It led to a U.S. Department of Justice review of the agency and the incident. In the video, Greene screamed, "I'm scared." The DOJ review will examine whether Governor John Bell Edwards knew about the circumstances of Greene's death. It will also determine whether Edwards was involved with efforts to bury the video evidence. A prominent Iranian film actress and feminist, Taraneh Ali-Dosti, was arrested Saturday over her support for ongoing nationwide protests. Iran's Mizan News reports that a number of celebrities were summoned to the prosecutor's office in the capital, Tehran. They were asked to explain their recent statements and provide evidence to substantiate their claims. The report said Ali Dosti, best known for Asghar Farhadi's 2016 Oscar-winning film The Salesman, did not submit any documents to support her claims. The report said the actress was arrested on judicial orders. It's unclear who else the prosecutor's office summoned on charges of publishing provocative material in support of street riots. Nationwide protests erupted following the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini in September when she was in police custody. A total of 11 people have so far been sentenced to death, with 2 already executed. The FIFA World Cup is one of the biggest events in the world. This year it was held in Qatar. Let's watch this short report about it.
The FIFA World Cup is one of the biggest events in the world. It is happening this year in 2022. Qatar is the first Muslim country to host this tournament. Muslim players like Zinedine Zidane, Karim Benzema and Mesut Ozil have engraved their names in the history of this sport. A lot of Muslim players will be representing their countries this year, like the legendary Mohamed Salah, Sadio Mane, and Riyad Mahrez. France won the 2018 World Cup. Its team was hailed as one of the greatest teams ever. One reason the French team was appreciated so much was its diversity. It had 7 Muslim players: Paul Pogba, Ousmane Dembélé, and N'Golo Kanté are some of the biggest names in the game. French victory gave rise to a whole lot of French Muslim girls who wanted to play football as well. But unfortunately, they are being blocked. On January 18, 2022, 160 French senators voted to prohibit religious symbols within sports federations, therefore during official competitions. That will keep many Muslim girls from playing soccer. But these football-playing girls are not giving up on their dreams. This is Paris's Luxembourg Garden. It is just behind the French Senate, which is trying to block girls with hijab from sports. They are protesting their ban from sports competitions. They have even formed a union. It is called Collective Les Hijabeuses. It means a collective of headscarf-wearing soccer players. Here is Fone Diawara, co-president.
Qui pratique un sport en particulier qui est le football. Et donc encore une fois, on est...
What bothers us is that thousands of women are being left out of this sport. They exclude us, whereas the fundamental values of football and sport are to unite and to come together. We don't see why we would remove it. There is no reason, there is nothing in the law, so I don't see why we should be forced to remove it. Above all, it is something personal. There is nobody who can ask us to remove it. France must not force French Muslim girls to choose between their faith and football. This is Salha Farouk for Muslim News.
An Israeli settler rams his car into 2 Palestinians. More details after the break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today.
I am what hunger looks like in America.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. An Israeli settler rammed his car into 2 Palestinian brothers fixing a flat tire, killing them both on Saturday. Muhammad and Muhannad Yusuf Muter were murdered south of the occupied West Bank city of Nablus, according to multiple Palestinian sources. They were from the Qalandia refugee camp in Jerusalem. Magen David Adam with the Israeli Emergency Service said a 50-year-old Israeli man drove into the brothers' vehicle, which was parked on the roadside. Earlier this week, the Israeli army confirmed killing a 15-year-old Palestinian girl during a raid in the occupied West Bank city of Jenin. The U.S. has called for accountability following the teen's killing. Since the beginning of the year, Israeli forces have killed 218 Palestinians. It is one of the deadliest years on record for Palestinians since 2005. Pakistan's top diplomat urged the international community to de-link women's rights in Afghanistan from its humanitarian and economic situation. Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari said starving the Afghan people cannot achieve women's empowerment or any other goal with the Taliban regime. The Taliban seized control of Afghanistan in August 2021, followed by the disruption of international financial aid. It has left the nation facing an economic, humanitarian, and human rights crisis. Women and girls particularly have been deprived of many rights, including education. The Biden administration froze $7 billion in Afghan central bank foreign reserves as part of sanctions against the Taliban. Many nations have placed several conditions for recognizing the Taliban's authority. That includes protection of the rights of women, the formation of an inclusive government, and Afghanistan not becoming a haven for terrorism. The World Health Organization warns billions of people lack access to safe drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene, putting them at risk of deadly infectious diseases. That's according to the WHO and UN Water's Global Analysis and Assessment of Sanitation and Drinking Water report issued this week. Data collected from 121 countries show billions of people are facing a health crisis. States must act urgently to improve water, sanitation, and hygiene, the report says. It is the most comprehensive study to date. The report found most countries are not on track to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goal of providing water and sanitation for all by 2030. Bruce Gordon, WHO unit head of water, sanitation, hygiene, and health, said only 25% of nations are on track to meet their target for sanitation and 45% for drinking water. A new law passed by Congress allows the U.S. government to engage directly with Burma's government in exile. It also requires the U.S. to develop a program of sanctions against Burma's military junta that seized power last year in a coup. The United States Burma Unified Through Rigorous Military Accountability, or Burma Act of 2022, was passed as part of the 2023 National Defense Authorization Act. The U.S. can now engage directly with the National Unity Government, National Unity Consultative Council, and the committee representing Burma's national legislature. It can also provide non-lethal support to the People's Defense Forces and ethnic armed organizations in Burma. A mosque under construction in Daegu, South Korea was targeted last week by vandals who put pigs' heads in front of the property. The Daegu Anti-Mosque Committee organized a big barbecue with pork not far from the mosque site. Daegu, a large city in the south, is where dozens of Muslim students from nearby Kyungpook University gather. Earlier this month, a pig's head was placed on a chair in front of the mosque. It is the third vandalism attack in 2 months targeting foreign Muslim students. They had been meeting since 2014 in a 2-story house in Daegu that served as a cultural and religious center. In late 2020, they obtained the green light to transform the makeshift center into a real mosque. In 2022, 200,000 Muslims were living in South Korea, the majority being foreign nationals, representing less than 1% of the population. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. If you could see you through my eyes instead of your ego, I believe you'd be surprised to see that you've been blind. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Yeah, before you abuse, criticize and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. It's time for in-depth analysis segment. Let's watch.
Thank you, Samia. World Cup is happening in Qatar, but at the same time, Qatar is being turned into a football itself. Lot of criticism, hardly any game when it comes to news. We have Robert Carter with us. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Thank you very much for having me.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Robert Carter is a British journalist and a YouTuber working for Press TV in London. Why the coverage of World Cup sounds like it does?
Well, quite frankly, there's open season in the Western world when it comes to criticism of Muslims and Islam. And I think that this has been reflected very much so in the coverage of the World Cup, which for the first time ever in its history is being hosted by an Arab Muslim majority country from the Middle East. It's been well exposed, the hypocrisy regarding the coverage of the World Cup here in Qatar. I mean, of course, Qatar is by no means a perfect country, and there is room for criticism of freedom of speech in order to criticize any host country of any sporting competition. But the fact of the matter is that the Qataris have been treated far differently to how other major countries who have hosted the World Cup and other sporting competitions have been treated by Western media. A few examples would be, say, Russia, the last hosts of the World Cup, who have very similar outlooks in regards to things like the LGBT movement, which Qatar has been getting routinely criticized for. Russia, of course, was pretty much free from any criticism during that time. Also, another good example would be the Israeli regime, which hosted the Eurovision Song Contest on more than one occasion, practically criticism-free, despite the ongoing human rights abuses against the Palestinian people. So clearly, there is something wrong with the coverage from Western media circles, particularly from Europe, in regards to Qatar. And the only reasonable reason why they would be treating Qatar different is because it's an Arab and a Muslim country. Surely that's got to be the reason, as that's the only thing that makes Qatar different to other countries which have hosted the competition before. And I can guarantee you that the criticism of the next World Cup host, which is the USA, will be practically invisible, to say the least, as it has been in the past, despite the fact that the biggest human rights abusers on the global stage is not the Qataris, it's not anyone from the Middle East, quite frankly, it's the US of A.
Well, we are a perfect country. We don't have any problems of what you're talking about. But isn't Qatar also a good friend of America, the perfect country, and has US bases? Qatar helped America get out of Afghanistan by hosting Taliban on American behalf for the longest period of time. What happened to all that friendship?
Yes, that's a very good question. Qatar is a political ally of the West and has been for a very long time. And the fact of the matter is that Qatar has invested billions of dollars worth into Western economies, including here in Europe as well. But let this be a message to the Muslim world that no matter how much you compromise on your Islamic principles, no matter how much you placate and basically accommodate Western audiences, Western guests, Western countries, and their world viewpoints, it's not going to stop the fact that they will criticize you for being different. They will criticize you for your cultural beliefs, for your conservative worldview. They'll criticize you for your religious beliefs, no matter how much you cater for them, compromise, bend over in order to make the West happy politically with you. And Qatar is the greatest example of this. We've seen from past coverage of other conflicts, for example, in Ukraine, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, suffering civilians get way more coverage than innocent lives which are suffering in countries like Yemen, for example, parts of Africa and elsewhere in Asia. And that's simply because there is an emphasis on taking care of the Western world. And there is clearly a sense of if there is suffering in the West, that's a greater priority than that in the Muslim, the African world, the Asian world, so on and so forth. So there is clearly a sense that if you're from Qatar, it's open season to criticize you and the way you live. And there is a great sense of white privilege and a sense of authority among Europeans and people in the West who feel that they are in a moral high ground position to go to these parts of the world and lecture locals on how they should live and behave. And I urge anyone from the Muslim world watching this to learn a lesson, to be proud of who you are, what your belief systems are, and to stand up for them and not always look to the West and simply compromise at every opportunity, because they're not there to basically reward you for that. They're still going to criticize, condemn, and push their worldview onto you, regardless of what you do in return.
Robert, do you think this is just a new chapter in the ongoing saga depicting Islam and Muslims in a particular way? Is it just a continuity of Islamophobia? Are we learning anything here?
Well, I think that Qatar will benefit from hosting the competition, despite all of the condemnation and criticism they've received from Western media circles and radical Western-based political and cultural ideologies. A lot of people are going there. Millions of people are going to visit over the course of the next few weeks and months, and they're going to witness what Arab and Muslim culture is really like behind those headlines. So I think that there will be some positives from Qatar hosting this competition, although I wish that they hadn't compromised so much on local culture and Islamic principles in order to cater for their guests. But still, there is a bit of dawah going on. They are showcasing what real Islam, real Arab culture is to many, many visitors. So hopefully there will be a kind of more positive view of the Arab and Muslim world among Western masses. But unfortunately, no, I think that there will still be a lot of criticism, a lot of negativity regarding the coverage of that part of the world. The media machine in the West here, the political machine in the West here, is not willing to change just because of a sporting competition. But again, I hope Muslims are going to look at what's happened here and learn from it, learn that we've got to build our own institutions, build our own communities, and stop hoping that the Western world will someday change and be more hospitable, more welcoming towards us. No one else will take care of Muslim community concerns if we don't do it ourselves.
How Qataris are responding to this negativity? Are they aware of it in Qatar on the streets, that it is being depicted in a particular way?
They're very aware of it. In fact, Qatari officials, including the senior leadership of the country, have been condemning it routinely even before the competition began. In fact, the Qatari World Cup chief has actually condemned the BBC, the British state's news platform, which has also been covering what's been going on in the World Cup as part of their sports coverage. They've actually been condemned by the Qataris for blatantly racist and inappropriate coverage, as many of their sports pundits are being used as some kind of propaganda mouthpiece to push a particular campaign which promotes things like the LGBT movement in the Muslim and Arab world and condemns local laws and customs which are based on Islamic practices and principles, things like that. So this has been routinely condemned by the Qatari authorities. I think that all fans, Qatari, Muslim, and even non-Muslim fans, are getting quite sick of this, quite frankly. The World Cup is a sports event. People pay big money to go and watch the sport they love, not to be waterboarded with political messages from fringe radical ideologies which exist in the West, but actually are not the majority viewpoint across the rest of the world. So people need to stop pushing their narrow-minded views into the sporting arena just because it's hosted by an Arab Muslim nation. If it was in reverse, they wouldn't like it. If Muslims went to Europe during sporting competitions hosted there and started telling them, you need to implement Islamic law in your countries to cater for our needs, they wouldn't like it. They wouldn't tolerate it. Muslims, the Qataris, need to stop tolerating it as well and actually get the handcuffs out in some cases if necessary.
Do you think some of the criticism which is connected with the immigrant worker not being treated well, do you find that criticism legitimate?
Of course, a single unjust migrant death is unacceptable. There's no doubt about that. And criticism on this issue has been around way before the World Cup even began. But the fact of the matter is that many Western media platforms have been pushing numbers regarding migrant deaths, which the Qatari authorities believe are grossly exaggerated, grossly inflated, and are not true. So there's a massive dispute over the numbers of migrants who have died as a result of the construction of the World Cup facilities in Qatar. The Qatari authorities have admitted to some, but those numbers are much smaller than what the Western world is pushing out there. And again, it falls into the question of what's true, what's not, what's propaganda, why are these numbers being exaggerated if they are, and is it a case of the Qataris being treated differently because of the fact that they're a Muslim and Arab country? And it appears that that is the case. I don't believe what the BBC, for example, a propaganda outfit which pushed lies regarding the Iraq invasion and occupation for many, many years, is saying about any Muslim country, especially the country hosting the World Cup. So let's just put it into perspective. The numbers are disputed, and let's try and keep to the facts here, and let's not just assume that because the Qataris are Arab or Muslim that they are automatically evil or they're killing people on purpose. Let's just put that to one side and try and focus on what the positive aspects of this story are, which is that there is a lot of good stories coming out of the World Cup. You look at the opening ceremony, for example, the Quran that was quoted there, the fact that people are experiencing the Arab and Muslim culture in a unique way now. That part of the story also needs attention, not just the negative stories, which has been the crux of pretty much the entire Western world's coverage of this competition so far, which is a disgrace. It's biased, it's unfair, and it's discriminatory, in my opinion.
Well, thank you so much, Robert Carter, for your time. Totally appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.